Graceland, the estate of legendary singer Elvis Presley, is facing a legal battle now over a potential foreclosure sale.
After 48 years of silence, the Attic of Graceland, a place shrouded in mystery and frozen in time, was finally opened. Imagine the weight of anticipation hanging in the air as heavy wooden doors, untouched for decades, slowly creaked ajar. What secrets could possibly lie hidden in a space so long sealed off? For years, fans and historians alike had speculated endlessly, their imaginations painting vivid pictures of forgotten treasures, or perhaps something far more personal. But no one was prepared for the truth. Behind piles of dusty trunks and faded furniture, the atmosphere wasn't just thick with age. It carried the unmistakable trace of a presence that seemed almost alive. It wasn't just objects gathering dust. It was a moment suspended between memory and revelation. What did it mean to uncover something so deeply hidden, so intimately connected to the king himself? This wasn't simply a discovery. It was a confrontation with time, with legacy, and with the invisible threads that tie us all to the past. As the shadows of the attic revealed their story, those present were left stunned, not just by what was found, but by what it meant for the spirit of Elvis Presley, still echoing through these silent walls after all these years. What was Elvis Presley hiding all these years? That's the question, echoing across the minds of those who stood in that long-forgotten space, gazing into the past as if it were somehow still alive. The attic had remained locked since the late 1970s, sealed with an unspoken understanding among the Presley family, left untouched out of reverence or maybe fear of what stirring those memories might unleash. But curiosity has a way of persisting through generations, growing louder with time. Eventually, the silence was broken. The moment the attic was opened, something shifted. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was palpable. Those present didn't speak at first. The air felt too heavy, the stillness too sacred. Some say they felt watched. Others described an overwhelming sense of stepping into someone else's grief. A space frozen not by forgetfulness, but by choice. Why would someone preserve a room like this for nearly 5 decades? What story was waiting inside, desperate to be heard? Was it a long-lost family member hidden from the public eye, protected from the overwhelming gaze of the world? A guest who had stayed too long or never left at all? Or could it have been something far stranger, an emotional relic rather than a physical one, left behind by a man whose life was anything but ordinary? After all, this was Elvis Presley, not just an icon, but a man who lived 2 lives, one for the world and one for himself. What he chose to keep hidden may say more about him than all the headlines ever could. And yet, as the dust settled and the objects began to speak, none of the expected answers came. What emerged instead was a story deeper, more human, and somehow more haunting. It wasn't just what was found, it was how it made people feel. You could see it in their faces, the way their eyes scanned the room, the way their bodies seemed anchored in awe. It wasn't just about uncovering things, it was about touching something sacred, something vulnerable. So stay with us as we unfold the truth behind that attic door. What lies ahead isn't just a discovery. It's a window into the soul of a man the world thought it already knew.
We have to sell Graceland. And I just looked at him and I said, that will never.
Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, died in 1977, but in many ways, his story never ended. Graceland, the mansion he called home, became more than just a tourist destination. It became a shrine, a living museum of a life that burned bright and ended too soon. Visitors come from around the world to walk through the halls where Elvis laughed, grieved, and created. They see the iconic jungle room, his private planes, and walls lined with gold records. Yet even amid all this fanfare, one space always remained out of reach, hidden from the public eye, and even from many within the Presley estate: the attic. For decades, that attic stood untouched, closed off, locked away, and spoken of only in whispers. People speculated endlessly. Was it filled with priceless memorabilia from Elvis's early days? Was it a storage space for the Presley family's most personal items? Or was it something more deliberate? A room too emotionally loaded to disturb, too sacred to catalog? Those closest to the estate never provided a clear answer. In interviews,
Elvis's death,
Yeah.
your mother woke up and knew instinctively that something was off. You want to tell us about that? She's 9 years old,
Yeah.
and most of us remember when we were 9 years old.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think this is the first time she's ever talked in detail about his death.
would dodge questions about the attic, always with a soft smile and a vague mention of family things. It was the kind of answer that satisfied no one, and yet hinted at something deeper. Some fans believed the attic was left untouched as a tribute to Gladys Presley, Elvis's mother, who passed away in 1958 and whom he adored with almost childlike intensity. Others believed it was about Elvis himself, and that what lay in that attic wasn't memorabilia, it was memory. It was grief. So, when the decision was finally made to open the attic, it wasn't taken lightly. A restoration team was brought in: historians, preservationists, and archivists. Their mission wasn't to excavate, but to understand, to listen to what the space had to say. The first thing they noticed? The silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from a lack of sound, but the weighted kind, like a held breath. Time hadn't moved in this space. Dust clung to everything like a soft shroud. The air was thick with a sense of reverence, like stepping into a private chapel built not with stone, but with sorrow. In the far corner of the attic, behind a curtain of boxes and draped cloth, the team found a sealed room. The door creaked open, as if reluctant to let go of what it had been guarding for so long. Inside, the temperature felt colder, the light more subdued. And then they saw it. Garments from another era, carefully hung. Shoes neatly arranged beneath them. A vanity with faded perfume bottles still standing as if waiting to be used. These were the belongings of Gladys Presley, untouched since her death. Dresses, some still bearing the scent of lavender. Handwritten letters, many addressed to Elvis, with phrases like, "My precious boy," scrawled in loopy script. And a photograph, yellowing at the edges, showing a young Elvis with wide, hopeful eyes, and a grin that didn't yet carry the weight of fame. That alone would have been enough to bring anyone to tears. This wasn't a museum exhibit. It was a preserved moment in time, a window into the private love between a mother and her son. But the room held more, much more. Across from the vanity sat a mannequin, positioned oddly, slouched slightly, as if in contemplation. Draped over it was one of Elvis's most recognizable jumpsuits, the white one with elaborate rhinestones, the cape folded delicately over one shoulder. At first glance, it looked like a person, so much so that one of the team members reportedly gasped aloud, instinctively apologizing for walking in on someone. That instinctive reaction, that moment of mistaking the figure for a living being, rattled them. Why would someone dress a mannequin like this? Why seat it in such a human pose? Why here, in a room so obviously centered on his mother? Theories abound, of course. Some believe Elvis created the mannequin himself, a symbolic gesture to keep a part of himself close to his mother after her passing. Others think it was added later by a grieving family member, maybe Vernon, Elvis's father, or even Lisa Marie, in a moment of spiritual connection. Still others speculate it was never meant to be seen at all, that it was a private ritual born of deep emotional pain. But what makes this more than a curious artifact is the story that came next. In the weeks leading up to the attic's opening, security footage from Graceland's upper floors reportedly showed subtle, unexplained movement. A shadow passing across the attic door, a faint creak, a flicker in the light. Nothing that could be confirmed, but enough to raise eyebrows. When the footage was reviewed after the attic was opened, some noticed that the shadow seemed to pause, right where the mannequin would have been. The online world lit up with speculation. Was it a ghost? A sign? Or merely coincidence amplified by emotion? No person was found, of course. No intruder, no squatter. But the psychological imprint was undeniable. The combination of objects, placement, and decades of secrecy created something far more powerful than a ghost story. It created a reckoning. Because what they found in that attic wasn't just about Elvis. It was about grief, about what we choose to hold on to, and what we hide away. About the layers of ourselves we lock behind emotional doors, hoping time will make them easier to bear. For Elvis, fame brought adoration, wealth, and global recognition. But it also brought isolation. The more the world demanded of him, the smaller his inner circle became. In many ways, that attic room represented the last vestige of a life before the stage lights. A life when his mother's approval meant more than applause. When comfort came from her voice, not a crowd. Her death devastated him, and many believe he never fully recovered. Is it any wonder, then, that a room filled with her essence might have been the only place he felt like himself? The jumpsuit on the mannequin, too, speaks volumes. It wasn't just clothing, it was armor. The outfit he wore as he transformed into Elvis the icon. To place that suit in a room devoted to his mother may have been his way of saying, "This is who I became. Are you proud?" There's something hauntingly beautiful about that, like a child showing their parent the costume they wore to survive the world. And what about the letters? Each one tells a story. Some were filled with everyday observations, shopping lists, small talk, reminders to eat. Others carried deeper emotion, fears, dreams, worries about her son's future. A few of them stopped mid-sentence, as if interrupted. Reading them feels invasive, but also intimate, like you've stumbled into a conversation that's still unfolding, even after death. One letter, dated just months before Gladys passed, simply reads, "You'll always be my little boy, no matter how many people call you a king." It's hard to read that and not feel the ache of absence. As the restoration team cataloged the room, they did so with unusual care, not just labeling items, but acknowledging their emotional weight. Some even said they could feel something shift inside themselves during the process. One archivist described the experience as less like discovery and more like listening to someone who had been waiting patiently to be heard. Now that the attic has been opened and its contents known, the question becomes, what should be done with it? Should it be added to the Graceland tour? Should it remain private? Or is its power rooted in its secrecy, its quiet resistance to spectacle? The Presley estate has yet to decide, but one thing is certain. This attic has changed the way we see Elvis Presley, not just as an icon, but as a son. A man shaped as much by sorrow as by song. And perhaps that's the real story here. Not just what was found, but what it revealed. That behind the glitter and the myth was a deeply sensitive human being trying to hold on to love in a world that kept asking him to give everything away. That long before he was the king, he was someone's little boy, grieving, remembering, and leaving pieces of himself behind in a hidden room where no one could see. Until now. Whether it was out of grief, mystery, or memory, Elvis's attic now stands as one of the most intimate, haunting corners of Graceland. For decades, the mansion told a carefully curated version of his life. The gold records, the flashy cars, the iconic costumes. But the attic? That was something else entirely. It was personal, it was quiet, and it was never meant for public eyes. In a place defined by spectacle, it preserved something raw and human, a silent tribute tucked away in dust and shadows. It makes you wonder what other truths lie behind the walls of fame. What do even the most celebrated lives hide when no one's looking? The sealed room wasn't just a discovery. It was an emotional mirror. To see Elvis not as a legend, but as a son mourning his mother, is to be reminded of how deeply loss can shape us, even in the brightest spotlight. We chase legacy, but we hold on to memory. And sometimes, we bury both in places we hope time will forget. But time didn't forget this one. And maybe that's the most powerful part of all. The king may be gone, but his secrets? They're only just beginning to surface. If stories like this move you, if they make you feel, wonder, or remember, don't forget to like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more timeless tributes. There's always another story waiting to be told.